Thank you, Thomas. I take the opportunity having both of you here, the two organizations who are part of our project with GESDA, to ask you in a nutshell and asking an answer in 1 minute, what is your aim for the continuity of this project? What is your, in front of you, people from different backgrounds, people coming from diplomatic sector, from scientific sector, you have business people here. What do you think can be the future of this project in a moment in which, if I may say, the big contradiction is that we are talking about the future of war and peace, and we are confronting some wars that are coming from last century, from the past, with methods of the past, with reasons of the past. What is your feeling? What is your aim? What do you expect from this exercise in the next years? Jean-Marie.
Well, as I said, I think wars are a reflection of a particular society. And the wars that we see today, yes, they reflect the past, but they reflect also a lot of new things. When you look at the presence of mercenaries, when you see the privatization of war, when you see how high-tech meets low-tech, the notion that there is a world of high-tech that is separated from the world of low-tech is definitely wrong, as we have seen just actually in the incursion from Gaza of the Hamas terrorists, who defeated low-tech. So what I expect from this project is that we are on the cusp of profound societal changes, accelerated by technology, just like the printing press transformed society. And we have to integrate that. I think the great weakness today of a lot of observers is that they are in their narrow field. They are looking at political science, or they are looking at this or that. They do not connect the dots. And my ambition in that project is to connect the dots so that we have a much more comprehensive view of the changes that are coming.
Thomas.
I think now, after piloting this approach for 1.5 years, starting with this idea that the GESDA methodology should also be applied to the future of, well, initially we said warfare and peace, but then we kind of felt we should put even a stronger emphasis on the notion of peace. I think what we can conclude after a serious attempt to conceptualize is that it makes sense to pursue that effort. But of course, now with the goal of producing concrete insights that would allow us then to better anticipate, to better regulate technological advances, both for the good and for the bad, in terms of warfare and promoting peace. I think that is. I think we kind of have now positively tested our initial assumption, and now it's a matter of applying that with the methodology that we have developed. My vision is, that in a current peace and security environment that is dominated by confrontation, by deterrence, that this process, manages to produce some fuel for cooperation, some fuel for reintroducing notions of cooperative security into our European and global security architecture. That is my vision.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Jean-Marie. Please join me in a great applause to our two protagonists. We ask you now to leave the seats to our three panelists. I ask Funmi Olonisakin, I ask Dingley Shen, I ask Michael Muller to join me on the scene, to have altogether a conversation on the topics that we just heard. We already had this conversation because Dingley, Funmi, and Michael were part of the panels and the workshops we had in Geneva and in New York. So it's we are starting from there. You, I think, heard what Jean-Marie and Thomas just said. I would like just to start with you, Dingley, by saying that you are here coming from Fudan University, yes, from Shanghai. And of course, your role in our workshop and here, it's a role that is so crucial and so interesting, because we are all thinking that you are representing here China, but you are representing yourself here, and I'm sure that your ability to be able to give us an overview of what is happening and what is the approach in China on this topic about anticipating and about the peace and war process can be so interesting for us. If I may say, I ask you just to focus on the topic technology and technological competition, because it is clear that in the last years there's a technological competition that is taking place. This exacerbation of the technological competition is creating more and more problems in perspective, and it was one of the topics that we had at the very core of the discussions in our workshops and in the presentation of Jean-Marie and Thomas. What is your take? What are your thoughts on that?
I very much appreciate for inviting me. Somehow I lost my voice. Discussing the relationship between technology and peace. I would analyze for two stories. One is that between US and China. American considers that if a competing country would access to high level of technology, the world may not be peaceful for the benefit of America. So US launched a tech war to block China to access the US originated technology, like high-level chips, etc. Indeed, that has created some negative impacts on China. So my leader will meet with US leader to discuss how to improve relationship. Therefore, the US would relax such a tech curve to some extent. US Congress leader, Mr. Chuck Schumer, just visited Beijing to meet with President Xi Jinping. As part of the process leading to possible Xi Jinping's participation in the APEC this year, and for a possible summit between the two presidents. So this is the relationship between technology and peace. For China, if China would have technology, the US would not have a decisive say that China has no right to reunify entire China across Taiwan Strait. It's China's internal affairs. China has all rights to settle this issue in China's manner, with or without violence, hopefully, peacefully. But the US meddling makes China so far has unable to do this. So China has been gloomy. You are hurting me. This is the first case. China considers that the access to technology would make China to live more peacefully, to make China not be hurt by the US peacefully. And the US view is exactly opposite. You guys would have technology. The US has no peace, or a peace on China's term. So the relationship is very complicated. We discussed this. I participated in the New York workshop. And we have a very complicated map, which has just been presented by Jean-Marie. Second story is the case in Ukraine and in Israel. I work on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons for my life. Most people believe the spread of nuclear weapon technology does not make the world peaceful. I am on this camp. But some people, including a renowned professor at Columbia University, where Jean-Marie is, believe the more spread of nuclear weapon technology, the more peace the world would become. Most people don't believe in him. But the problem is these days, Ukraine would believe in that. If they would not abandon their nuclear weapon, it's highly unlikely Russia would send force to conduct a special operation on the territory of Ukraine to grab their land. Therefore, we see the access, availability of technology and peace. If Ukraine would have nuclear weapon, spread technology, which is a legacy of Soviet Union, Russia may be more tolerant to Ukraine's demanding to join NATO. But another case, despite the successful denial of technology by Israel and Egypt to those on Gaza Strait, to Hamas, they only have very low level of technology. This time they use tractor to knock down the wall. They use a very low level glider to penetrate the wall. But they made it. They brought another 911 to Israel. So the access to technology may not be instrumental to peace. The peace on Israel's term. I don't buy the idea of peace on Hamas' term. But such a kind of relationship between technology and peace is very complicated. Personally, I cannot have a definite say. A more restrictive the technology has been denied, the more peace we have. I think more transcending to this term is we have to build the culture and the willingness to live peacefully. Like Arafat and Rabin, peace for land. Israel grabbed the land back to Palestine. And Palestine takes some realistic view. They would be never able to bring all land defined by the UN to them back. They are unable to do this. Live realistically. But Hamas does not buy this idea. So this is another story. Whether we can define simple term between technology and peace seems to be simply impossible. So we have to both seek to deny the spread of sophisticated technology and also to build a peaceful, harmonious way to respect each other's survival, live safely, securely, and decently amongst all people between Ukraine and Russia, between mainland Chinese and the Chinese living on Taiwan island, between America and the Chinese, and between Palestinian and Jewish people living in Israel. I think that is the fundamental thing we have to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dingley. Funmi, I would like you to focus on the word future. you are daily in contact with students. I think among the best students in the world at King's, coming from everywhere. And we are talking about peace and war, the future in 10 years, 25 years. These students will be the protagonists at that time of the decisions that will create peace or create war. Can you elaborate a little bit about what training can change in positive the relationship between peace and war, and how do you see and where do you see in the future today's students you have daily with you working, and you have to explain then what is happening today with this unexpected, unpredictable conflicts, and with this so incredible situation that we are living today.
No, thank you. I think really we cannot think about today in the world without thinking about people, technology, and the future. And what do I mean by that? Much of the conversation we have about technology and peace or war, but mostly war in the future, has much to do with systems, processes, how the environment might change. But actually the missing piece in terms of how we build knowledge, and that's, that actually is a matter for the classroom of today. The missing piece is what about the people of the future and the question of war and peace. When we think about the people of the future, or young people, if you like, and war and peace today, even those students, when we link them with the policy world and the questions of war and peace, we're so fixated. I think it was Jean-Marie who talks about the tyranny of now. We're fixated on today, that it doesn't really matter what you do. You're going to have those Generation Z who actually we should think about for the future. They're fixed on the conflict of yesterday and of today in the classroom. But it's not for the purpose of asking what technology would help them do differently in the future. And therefore, there are three things that I think when I think of this generation and when I think of future people as a whole. And by future people, I mean those who would govern the world in 2050. Once you frame the question, how you frame the question, whether in the classroom or in policy or boardrooms, about how the perspectives of people who will govern the future will change, and that future being 2050, more than 25 years from now, then you begin to separate the youth of today and the policies of today from the potential realities of tomorrow. Technology allows you to ask that question, because chronologically, you're not dealing with your 35 to 40-year-olds. You're probably dealing with the 15-year-olds in that generation to 18-year-olds, the ones who are who just registered on my campus in the last couple of weeks. And once you do that, the question you frame begins to be to study in perpetuity, if you like, that kind of age range, how they really liaise or align themselves with technology, how they begin to build solidarity, and that solidarity building does something for the kinds of institutions they engage. That is something we don't actually fix attention on most of the time. When you observe how they build solidarity, you begin to see the connection transnationally, and that's what happens on campuses like mine, where you have about 33,000 students from about 150 countries. When they build solidarity through the use of technology, but also through various forms of engagement, you begin to see how the institutions of today might not be fit for purpose. Because their reference points, sadly, apart from when they think about jobs, when they're now postgraduates, they think about the United Nations, they think about that in the classroom, but on the questions of today that bind them, the institutions of today are not necessarily what they focus on. they build solidarity or actually build conflict and whatever forms of peace they build in spite of the institutions around them. And so I think the question for us as academics, for me as an academic, which is what occupies my time as a researcher when I'm not thinking of university governance, is what methodology do we then bring to bear when we're thinking about the future of peace and war? And methodologically, therefore, we've got to take those points around the anticipation. How do you move it from war to peace is the biggest challenge of all. And you have to, therefore, think longitudinally in terms of design. You have to think about the cooperation between technology that this community of people engage and that of the kinds of systems that they're creating. Because when you see solidarity building, it can take you towards peace or war. But more often than not, because we are so infused in the tyranny of now, we do not look at what needs to be done in terms of norms and ethics that bind science and people that begins to look at solidarity building towards peace. The question of peace is that what really sits massively at the heart of all of this, that unless, therefore, we begin to look at the gaps in it and the inequities that are generated by technology and by institutions like mine. We're not alone. They're elite institutions that build solidarity perhaps among some of the most privileged, and we try to bring in other complexities. But unless we begin to look at that and bring the majority world without thinking only about states, because states will look different, to my mind, in the future if we look at the attitudes of this generation of people that we're talking about. The majority world may not organize in the same way that we're organized today, and differences in culture, in class, in normative frameworks have to be brought into how we think about technology. I think there's much more complexity when we look at the future and we see people and not just systems and machines.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Funmi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, you are at the origin of this exercise, of this project.
Not alone.
You are one of those who created this idea and this exercise. And this exercise is at the beginning. And we heard some ideas, but the idea is to continue and to try to develop it. So what is your feeling about the fact that we are in a period of acceleration of technology, technological development, science, technology, and at the same time we are in a period of acceleration of geopolitical conflicts? Is there a link between the two aspects, or do you think that this link is absolutely not there? And if the link is there, where do you see the role of GESDA in terms of feeding the multilateral system that is, unfortunately today, in great trouble, in big difficulty, because one of the big problem of all these topics is the fact that the multilateral system is today not in great shape. What is your reaction to this point?
Well, thank you. I think the sort of overarching insight that many people are beginning to get, thinking about the future and the connection between science and the geopolitical reality that we know today, is that we are going to be seeing, and I think I connect with that, more and more that technology will overtake ideology as the determinant factor in who is going to be the leaders in our future world. And that brings a number of insights and a number of reactions, and I agree with Funmi on a lot of what she said today. But that doesn't mean that technology is going to have just a negative impact on the geopolitics of tomorrow. Science and technology has an enormous potential to increase the geopolitical tensions that we have today, but it also offers tools and opportunities to mitigate these tensions. And the net effect depends on how we, broadly speaking, choose to harness these advancements, on the norms and rules that we will establish, and the kind of diplomatic efforts that we're going to invest in. And it can go either way, as far as I can see right now. We are not at a moment where our collective insight and our collective understanding of what is coming in terms of the technologies and the effect it's going to have on our lives in all its aspects, as has been mentioned before, it doesn't translate into action yet. And that's part of what I hope that this effort and this initiative can do. There's a whole series of areas in which we need to be really careful about how we deal with it in the future in order to not to tilt into further conflict, and conflict that is going to be potentially infinitely more dangerous because of technology and because of the way technology is evolving in terms of autonomous weapons, in terms of all sorts of elements that we are beginning to lose a little bit control over if we're not careful. So, for example, we need to look at the resource scarcity and the competition for resources in terms of making sure that the geopolitical balance is as healthy as possible. We have to look at the technological asymmetry, the fact that a big part of our world does not have access and will not have access at the same speed as the other half or the other third or whatever the proportion is going to be, which in itself is a huge vector of potential conflict. Just as inequalities are in the economic and development sphere, the same will happen in the technological sphere. We already see now a number of uses of technology that are really pernicious, whether it's digital espionage and cyber warfare, whether it's information warfare and propaganda, whether it's the fact that the new technologies are pushing the economic disparities as well in our societies. We have to look at the ethical and normative challenges that these things will bring, and which will be part also of that inequality that we need to make sure that we bridge in some way or other. The list is long. I'm not going to get long, but you get the idea of the richness and the broadness of the issues that we collectively, because it's no longer just a matter of our leaders in the traditional sense, at the national level or otherwise. We all have a responsibility to be part of the search for those solutions in our societies at whatever level we are at, and at what level capacity that each one of us brings. And in that context, I think GESDA is an interesting evolution in terms of coming up with a tool that will address many of these things. The anticipatory approach of GESDA is a little bit like giving policy and diplomatic actors a futuristic compass, a way forward. It allows them, and will allow them, to navigate the uncertain terrains of the future, which we have talked about, with greater clarity, with greater foresight, and with a greater collaborative spirit. And given the rapidly changing scientific and technological landscape, I think that such an approach is going to become completely indispensable for maintaining peace, for maintaining stability, and for the prosperity of the international world in general. And again, here there's, GESDA is doing a lot of this already. And I might mention just a few for those of you who haven't familiarized yourself completely with what GESDA is doing and is intending to do, which is clearly anticipation and foresight. It's bridging, it's a bridge-building element between science and diplomacy. It provides policy recommendations on how these technologies are going to impact and how and those that are in charge of our communities need to address them. It helps with capacity building. It was mentioned at one point that the speed with which the new technologies are coming to us is such that most of us, certainly all of us in this room, but most of us in general, are not in a position to adapt quickly enough to the effect they will have on us, on our lives. And that is a huge challenge that we need to address, and that hopefully we can help address as well. We have to help set global standards. We have been talking, if there's one thing that has come out of the ChatGPT is a sudden awakening to the need for establishing some governance norms to make sure that we inject some ethics into the way that we deal with these new technologies, and to make sure that the equity aspect is taken in seriously, so that we create technologies not just for people who look like you and me, Enrico, but for everybody on this planet. And those, I think that in itself is a huge vector of avoiding conflict if we manage to do that in the right way. Promoting dialogue and cooperation. I said addressing the ethical implications, supporting the Sustainable Development Goals, our global roadmap for where we need to go, and that we all agree to, asymmetrically, but still, that are an incredibly important element and shows us the way forward. We help with crisis management and crisis prevention through the anticipation that we come up with. And we must also be very aware and help also with public awareness, as I just said before, and engagement on these issues. Because if we don't do that very deeply and very quickly, we are going to have problems. I stop there.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. I take the opportunity of the last 2 minutes just to ask you all the three one question, the same question, because I have to choose, of course, one topic. There are many topics. We discussed some of them, but there's one topic that is strictly related to the technological development, that is the rise of mobility. Physical mobility, virtual mobility, it is one of the big changes in our life today. And mobility has an important consequence in terms of integration, people knowing each other and feeling at home in many other places. And at the same time, mobility means also raising fears about the diversity, the others, the role of the others, and maybe also not feeling at home when you are at home. And this is part of the political debate in many countries in the world, mostly in the Western world. I think this is maybe the core of the big debate in our cleavages, in our societies, and this is the topic also in many other countries. So can I ask you one thought about this topic, and how do you see this topic developed in the next future related to our exercise? Dingley.
For technological mobility, normally it's good if we can communicate faster than the speed of light. That would be great. But for political process, somehow some mature speed of mobility might be better. For instance, Ukraine, Russia, and the West could sit down to negotiate what would be the win-win-win outcome for all the three parties, for an international assurance of Ukraine's security, in which Ukraine does not need to join any international airlines grouping, but still secure its border. And Russia, NATO can send some force, and the UN, in the framework, China can also make contribution to make the country secure. They need to spend lengthy time to negotiate. That would save Russia to send a force, and NATO and US run out of their munition to support Ukraine. So we need some measured pace of mobility.
Funmi.
That's probably the most political question of the day, because virtual mobility looks very painless, but it carries a lot of pain because of the question of inequality, and yet it is the only way anyone in the parts of the world that would never have access to the wealth of the global north can communicate. But I feel that one issue that is not on the table is the politics of physical mobility will become one of the most important terms of trade. Because for as long as the richest countries can go in and out of the poorest countries that have the natural resources to make those rich countries richer, and yet they block their countries from being visited even for any moment of time by those who need access to education or other things, we cannot resolve this question of peace and war. That is the crux of the matter, and that's where we have to really determine the connection between now and the future, and the connection between now and future peace at all. Thank you.
Michael.
I'll interpret the word mobility in a really broad way. We're faced with massive existential problems. There is no way that we're going to solve them unless we find ways of collaborating and working together in ways that we have never, ever done before. We means, I mean, humanity, all of us. In other words, we have to come up with new structures, so the mobility, both mental and the online and the physical, etc., has to result in a different kind of multilateralism, one that is much more collaborative, integrated, de-siloed, preventive, etc. All the nice words that we bandy about. But the fact is that we have to come into a completely different way of working together to solve these big problems. Otherwise, we're not going to make it. It's as simple as that, as far as I'm concerned. And so mobility, absolutely, but in all its forms.
I think, and I'm aware that at the end of this panel, we opened more boxes than we were able to close boxes. And I think it's the way to convince ourselves that we have to work on this track, because this track is so crucial for our future. And the desperate situations that we are experiencing today are, I think, the best boost, the best push for all of us to continue in that direction. So I would like to thank all our panelists, thank GESDA for the leadership GESDA had in creating this exercise. And I would like to thank you all for having attended this fantastic panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.